right, so we're going to take a deep dive into this whole God the Father thing today.
Yeah.
You shared some excerpts with me from this religious text that really seems to focus on him.
Right.
And, it got me thinking, there's just so much out there about God the Father,
Uh-huh.
but I feel like a lot of it is just assumptions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that
Yeah.
we need to clarify. So hopefully this deep dive can help with that.
Okay, so let's even back up before we open these excerpts.
Okay.
What are like some of the biggest misconceptions that you see people having about God the Father?
Well, one of the big ones is that he's distant,
Okay.
and uninvolved and
Yeah.
just like this kind of cosmic clockmaker who set everything in motion and then just like stepped back.
Right, like the absentee landlord kind of. And then
Exactly.
there's the whole, Old Testament God thing, the
Uh,
fire and brimstone,
right.
all wrath and vengeance
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from just like a surface reading. Right.
of certain passages,
Yeah.
but those interpretations miss the bigger picture.
So let's like start filling in that bigger picture then with these Old Testament excerpts.
Yeah.
What kind of picture of God the Father are we actually getting here?
Well, it's a lot richer than a lot of people think.
Okay.
Like in Exodus 34:67,
Okay.
it describes God as merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abounding in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin.
Okay, that doesn't sound very wrathful or vengeful at all.
Right.
But what about like his relationship with humanity? Is it just like
Hmm.
a ruler and his subjects?
Not at all.
Okay.
These excerpts really highlight his desire
Okay.
for a personal connection with his people.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that in the covenants he makes with Noah and Abraham.
Okay.
These aren't just legal contracts.
Yeah.
These are expressions of like a really deep personal bond.
Yeah, like a promise between
With a family.
family. Okay.
Yeah.
And those promises were big, right?
Like it wasn't just, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine.
Right.
It was much deeper.
Much deeper. Yeah. Think about what God promised Abraham.
Okay.
In Genesis 12.137, 13.1317, 15.156, 17.138, and 22.1518.
Wow.
Numerous descendants, a land of their own, and a blessing that would extend to all nations.
Wow.
So it wasn't just material benefits.
Right.
This pointed to something bigger,
Oh.
a much grander plan.
A divine legacy.
Yes.
So it's like he's weaving a story,
Yes.
a tapestry of redemption that involves humanity.
Exactly.
Okay, and speaking of redemption, the Exodus story
Yes.
comes to mind. How does that fit in?
Right. So the Exodus is a really powerful symbol
Yeah.
of God's desire to redeem
Okay.
not just a nation, but all of humanity.
Mm.
And you can think about it this way.
Good.
The Israelites were physically liberated from slavery,
Right.
and that mirrors our own need for spiritual liberation from sin.
Okay.
And as 1 Corinthians 10.1-4 says,
All right.
that journey that the Israelites went through really prefigures our own journey toward freedom.
Okay, so it's like a blueprint for our own redemption.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not always these epic narratives, is it? Sometimes it's just raw, cries of the heart that reveal the most about God.
And the Psalms really capture that
Yeah.
personal and relational aspect.
Mm-hmm.
We encounter him not as this distant ruler,
Okay.
but as like a refuge, a confidant, a source of strength.
Yeah, like in Psalm 27.5.
Yes.
It says, "For in the time of trouble, he shall hide me in his pavilion, in the secret place of his tabernacle. He shall hide me. He shall set me high upon a rock." And you can feel that sense of being sheltered and protected.
This beautiful imagery.
And,
How does
we all
our-
crave that
Yes.
security and that safe haven.
Exactly.
And it's so comforting, like in Psalm 46.1.
Mm-hmm.
God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble.
Yes.
But I mean, it can't all be poetic imagery and comforting words. Right? What about those passages about God's anger and judgment?
Yeah.
How do we reconcile that with this picture of love and compassion?
It can be challenging,
Yeah.
but it's important to remember that even in those moments,
Okay.
God's love and mercy are never absent.
Okay.
Like, think about David's repentance.
Okay.
In Psalm 51.1 and 11,
Mm-hmm.
he'd committed these really serious sins,
Yeah.
but God forgave him and restored him.
Wow. So even when justice needs to be served,
Yeah,
forgiveness is still possible.
always.
It's not an either.
Right.
It can be both.
Exactly. And Psalm 103.11-314 talks about that.
Okay.
For as the heavens are high above the earth, so great is his mercy toward those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us.
So it's like a clean slate, a total fresh start.
Yes.
Wow, that's powerful. So what else does this picture of God the Father reveal?
Mm.
What about his goodness?
Well, Psalm 146.7 and 9 really talks about that.
Okay.
It describes God's care for the oppressed, the hungry, the imprisoned, the widowed. He
Okay.
sees the suffering in the world,
Yeah.
and he acts to alleviate it.
So he's not indifferent.
No, not at all.
He's actively involved.
Yes.
Wow, that's powerful and so needed
Yes.
in our world. What about God's faithfulness?
Well, the Old Testament is full of stories
Okay.
of his faithfulness even when his people strayed from him.
Right.
And the book of Hosea is a good example.
Okay.
It uses this analogy of a husband's love for his wife
Okay.
to illustrate God's love for Israel,
Even when she's unfaithful.
even when she's unfaithful.
It's a powerful picture.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, but it's also beautiful.
Yeah. So he doesn't give up easily.
No, he doesn't.
So Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28
Yes.
also talk about this, outlining the blessings of obedience
Right, yeah.
and the consequences of turning away.
But it's not about punishment.
Right.
It's about helping us see
Okay.
the benefits of aligning ourselves with him.
So it's not like rewards and punishments.
Right.
It's more about,
It's about wanting the best for us.
yeah, he's invested in our well-being,
Yes.
even when we mess up.
Even when we make bad choices.
And Isaiah 41:9-10 says,
Yes.
"Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand."
Beautiful.
It's a powerful promise of support.
Yeah, it is.
So what about this idea of God as a God of vengeance?
Yeah.
How does that fit in?
I think it's important to understand the context of those
Yeah.
passages.
Thanks,
When
man.
the Old Testament talks about God's vengeance, it's about protecting his people from those who would harm them.
Okay.
It's not about him being vindictive or anything.
Okay, so it's more about justice and protection.
Exactly.
Standing up for the vulnerable,
Yes,
not
bigger.
blind rage.
Right.
So amidst all these attributes, mercy, justice, faithfulness, protection,
Yes.
this idea of God as Father seems to be emerging.
Yes, you're picking up on a key theme here.
Hmm.
This concept of God as Father isn't just a New Testament thing. It's
Right.
all through the Old Testament.
Okay.
Deuteronomy 32.6 refers to God as Israel's Father,
Okay.
who redeemed them.
Hmm.
Isaiah 64.8 says, "O Lord, you are our Father."
No.
And Malachi, in both 1.6 and 2.6 and 2.10,
Okay.
affirms God's fatherhood, connecting it to both creation and redemption.
So even in the Old Testament, we see this personal, familial aspect of God.
Yes,
He's not just a distant ruler, but a father
exactly.
who loves and guides and protects.
Yes.
So how does this understanding evolve in the New Testament?
Yeah,
That's what we'll explore next time.
I'm excited for that.
Me too.
Okay.
Okay, so we've been looking at this picture of God the Father, from the Old Testament. This idea of a God who, is personal and involved,
Yes.
a God of mercy and justice and faithfulness and protection.
Uh-huh.
So how does the New Testament kind of expand on that?
Well, the New Testament really builds on those foundations from the Old Testament, but it also, brings some new things to light,
Yeah.
especially through Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus always talked about my Father.
Right.
So obviously that relationship was super important.
Central to his message. Yeah.
So does that shift the focus from God as the father of a nation, like in the Old Testament with Israel,
Yeah.
to something more individual, more personal?
That's a good point. Yeah. I think in the New Testament,
Okay.
we see this concept of God's fatherhood
Mm-hmm.
expand, beyond just the national context.
Okay.
And it embraces all those who believe in Jesus.
So it's like a spiritual adoption.
Exactly.
They're part of God's family through Christ.
Yes. And John 1.12-13 puts it like this.
Okay.
But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name.
It's an amazing invitation, to have this personal relationship with God.
It is.
But how does that actually happen?
Yeah.
How do we become children of God?
Well, the New Testament makes it clear that it's through the work of Christ.
Right.
It's through his sacrifice on the cross
Right.
that this adoption is even possible.
Okay.
And Galatians 4.5-6 describes it this way.
Okay.
God sent forth his Son to redeem those who are under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying out, Abba, Father.
Wow. That image is just so powerful.
It is.
That the Spirit cries out,
Yes.
Abba, Father, from within us.
It's beautiful.
So how does Jesus himself
Mm.
reveal God the Father to us.
Well, the thing is, Jesus being God the Son,
Mm-hmm.
he provides the most complete revelation of God the Father.
So to know Jesus is to know the Father.
Exactly.
They're like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, and John 14:9 says,
Okay.
he who has seen me has seen the Father.
Wow. And John 1:18 says,
Yes.
no one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son has declared him. It means that everything Jesus did and said
Yes.
was like a window into the heart of God.
Exactly.
So what are some of those attributes of the Father that we see in Jesus?
Well, one that really stands out is the Father's generosity.
Okay.
We see God as a God who gives so lavishly.
Mm-hmm.
He pours out his love and his grace without holding anything back.
Okay. And we see that in creation, right?
Yeah, think about it.
Okay.
God created everything.
Right.
This incredible universe.
Knowing that we'd mess things up.
Exactly. And that's a breathtaking act of generosity
Yeah.
and creativity.
Yeah. What about Bethlehem?
Well, at Bethlehem,
Mm.
we see this generosity become even more personal.
Okay.
The Father sending his Son into the world as a vulnerable baby.
Right.
To live among us.
Right.
Imagine the Father watching his Son, who, had always enjoyed heaven, now having to deal with all of our human limitations.
Yeah. It's hard to even imagine.
It is. And then, of course, there's Calvary.
Right. The ultimate sacrifice.
Yes. At Calvary, we see the culmination of the Father's love.
Okay.
And just the depth of his sacrifice to watch his own Son suffer, to be separated from him in that way.
Yeah.
It's a level of pain that's just unimaginable.
It really is.
And yet the Father endures it
Because of love.
because of his love for us.
The cross really reveals it all.
It does.
So how did Jesus, show this love in his interactions with people?
Well, we see it all the time.
Okay.
He touched the leper,
Right.
forgave the adulteress, dined with tax collectors and sinners.
He was willing to go against the norms
He was.
to show God's love.
Yes. And the miracles,
Yeah, the healing.
raising of the dead,
What?
all expressions of the Father's love.
And power.
And power.
It's like Jesus was saying, look, this is who the Father is.
Yes.
This is how much he loves you.
Exactly.
But it wasn't always these big things, right?
Right.
He also used simple stories.
The parables.
Yeah, to show God's heart.
Yes. And especially his love for those who are lost.
And in Luke 15, we find these three parables
Yeah.
that illustrate that perfectly.
Yeah. The parables of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the prodigal son.
Okay, so it's not about us finding our way back.
Right?
It's about him seeking us,
Yes. He's pursuing us.
like in the lost sheep.
Yeah.
The shepherd doesn't just give up on that one sheep.
He leaves the 99 to go find the one.
And there's so much joy when he does.
There is.
That's God's heart.
It is.
And the lost coin, that woman searching diligently,
She doesn't stop.
she doesn't stop until she finds it.
And we're precious to him.
Right.
He won't rest until we're found.
And then there's the prodigal son.
Right. Everyone loves that story.
It's such a good story. What does that tell us?
Well, I think the prodigal son really shows us
Okay.
God's unconditional love
Oh, yeah.
and his forgiveness.
Okay.
No matter what we've done, he's always ready to welcome us back.
And there's no judgment.
No guilt trips.
It's just pure celebration.
It is pure joy.
Yeah, he's just saying, welcome home.
Yes.
I've been waiting for you.
Yeah.
So what about the Father's role in the second coming? Is he involved in that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The New Testament
Okay.
says that the Father is not just watching from a distance.
Right.
He's actively involved
Okay.
in orchestrating Christ's return.
So it's not just Jesus coming back.
Right.
It's Jesus with the full authority of God the Father.
Exactly. And Matthew 16:27 says,
Okay.
for the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels.
Wow. And Matthew 26:64,
Yes.
Jesus says, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power of the Father and coming on the clouds of heaven.
Powerful.
But there's also judgment, isn't there?
Yes. And Revelation 6:16 talks about that.
Okay.
The wicked trying to hide
Right.
from the wrath of the Lamb.
But it's not just about judgment.
No, it's not.
It's about ultimate redemption
Yes.
and restoration. It's the culmination of God's plan.
So it's both an ending and a beginning.
Exactly.
And the Father longs for that day
He does.
when all will be made new.
Yes, when justice will prevail
Mhm.
and when his children will be gathered home.
Wow. It's a beautiful vision of hope
It
and restoration.
is.
So what does this all mean for us?
Right.
How does understanding God as a loving Father
Yeah,
impact our lives today?
that's a good question.
That's what we'll talk about next time. All right. So we've really explored this idea of God the Father,
Yeah.
Starting way back in the Old Testament, and then seeing how it all unfolds in the New Testament.
Right, we've seen a God of
Yeah.
mercy and justice,
Yeah.
a covenant God who wants to be close to us, a redeemer who sets us free,
Yeah.
a refuge, a forgiver,
Yeah.
a God who gives so much.
It really flips the script on how a lot of people think about him.
Yeah, it does.
He's not some distant, uncaring figure.
Right.
He's a loving father.
Yes, he is.
Who wants to be involved in our lives?
He does.
So how does this understanding impact our lives, practically speaking?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
How does knowing all of this actually change the way we live?
Right. It's not just about head knowledge.
Exactly.
It's about letting it transform us.
It is.
Yeah.
If we really understand
Yeah.
the depth of God's love
Mm.
and we let it really sink in,
Okay.
it should change everything.
So we become like conduits of that love.
Yes, we should be more compassionate,
Okay.
more forgiving, more generous, more willing to serve,
Okay.
less judgmental,
Right.
less quick to anger.
So it spills out into our relationships with others.
Yes, absolutely. If that's how God treats us,
Yeah.
we should treat others that way too.
With love and respect and understanding.
Exactly. And it's not always easy.
No.
We all mess up.
Of course.
We're human.
Yeah.
But the good news is
Yeah.
that God's always there
To pick us up.
to pick us up,
Yeah.
dust us off.
And remind us that he loves us.
Exactly. He never gives up on him.
So it's a journey
It is a process.
of growth and transformation.
Yes.
And we'll probably never fully grasp
Yeah.
the depths of God's love.
It's too big.
But we can keep experiencing it
Yes, we can.
more and more.
And we can try to reflect it
Yeah.
in our own lives.
So the key takeaway here,
Yes.
that God the Father is not this distant being.
Right.
He's personal.
Yes,
He loves us.
he does.
And he wants a relationship with us.
He really does.
He gives. He forgives.
Yes,
And he's always working for our good.
that's right.
So I think as you continue to reflect on these excerpts,
Mm-hmm.
consider how this understanding
Yeah.
might change the way you see yourself,
Right.
your relationships,
Yes.
your place in this whole story of redemption.
It's a big question.
It is a big question. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been fun.
I hope this has given you a fresh perspective
Yeah.
on God the Father.
And a desire to keep learning.
Yeah. Keep exploring these amazing ideas.
It's a lifelong journey.
Until next time.
Yes, until next time.